They come by the thousands, literally, desperate people escaping war and poverty. Trying to reach Europe, they put lives in the hands of smugglers. Now, all too often, they never make it across the Mediterranean. This past week, the worst accident to date took the lives of 900 people. Many of the victims were trapped in the hold of a ship that capsized just a few miles off the coast of Libya. That catastrophe brought European leaders to an emergency summit. There are calls for increased cooperation for search and rescue efforts. But rescue is only part of a far larger, far more complex issue. 5,000 people a week are expected to pour into Italy alone this year. Now, Colette Mazzucelli is an adjunct associate professor at the NYU Center for Global Affairs. Welcome to the show, Professor.
Thank you.
This has really become a crisis. We were talking during commercial break in terms of sheer numbers here during this, I guess, illegal migration. What are the numbers? What are we talking about in terms of people losing their lives?
Indeed. I mean, in 2014, if you think about it, 3,500 lives lost. Since 2000, estimates, 22,000 lost in the Mediterranean route alone, the most deadly route of all of the routes taken by migrants. Now, we have to bear in mind that this is only what is reported. For every life lost, there are probably 2 that go unreported. So you can maximize these figures at least twofold, because the data that we have does not tell the whole story.
This is absolutely mind-boggling here. The EU professors pledging triple funding, of course, for military and rescue operations. I guess, is that really going to solve anything?
No, and my concern is that when you propose a military operation, my opinion is that you only do that if you believe you can make the situation better. I believe, in fact, it will make it worse. If these are not Somali pirates. These are desperate, vulnerable people who are traversing in boats that are rickety. If you take the risk of trying to, for example, bomb one of these boats, you may wind up killing innocent men and, more importantly, women and children who constitute, in some ways, the majority of those who are at risk.
But Professor, we have to talk frank here.
Yes.
We have a deadly cocktail, a triple threat: politics, economics, and race.
Yes.
And you take a look at these people, largely of color, coming over by the
Yes.
thousands to Italy. You know, basically infiltrating a political system, a culture that is largely so much different than theirs. I would assume that you have people over there, the common folks, that are going to be in uproar about this, despite the fact that these people really need help.
Well, you have 2 issues at once. All right? You have a humanitarian imperative for the Europeans to act, and that's search and rescue. And then you have the need to prevent smuggling, which I believe must be handled also with a combination of aerial as well as search and rescue, boat patrol, both in tandem. I also think that on the European side, you rightly point out, you have a very deadly mix. You have the politics of austerity, which is exacerbating the economic conditions in these countries. That, in turn, leads to the rise of far-right politicians.
Absolutely.
That will play the card, meaning immigration means that this is a detriment to our societies. We know how the card is played. It's played over and over again. In fact, I believe that the European Union leaders have the responsibility to fill the central political space with a humanitarian operation that stresses the need to secure, through search and rescue, the security conditions on the continent, as well as to invest in those countries to make it possible for these people to stay.
Now, that makes perfect sense to me, Professor.
Thank you, sir.
The question, though, comes in. This is our last question for you on this thing, the economics of all this. All of this costs money. The military costs money. Trying to secure a situation over there in African countries is both political as well as economic.
Yes.
And then also finding places for these people to stay, whether they be refugee camps, finding them jobs, housing, whatever. All of this costs money. Where is the money coming from in Europe right now, and as a politically, economically unstable situation?
Well, Mare Nostrum, which was the Italian search and rescue from October 2013 to 2014, cost approximately €9 million per month. The expansion of what they are projecting now for Triton would cost over €100 million annually. The money comes in part from the European budget and in part from different member state contributions. The question is, The European Union has always emphasized economic investment in parts of the world which need that type of infrastructural development. The money, in my opinion, is there, but it's the question of how it is used, Julian. If it is used in a way to bomb boats, that I don't think is an effective use. It has to be used as an investment to make sure, first and foremost, that search and rescue is emphasized. Second, and I can't emphasize this more clearly, that money has to be put into areas to invest in infrastructure so that these people learn to stay.
Right.
They should not be forced to try to flee in these rickety boats.
I would like to say, Professor, that I would not want to see you back on this program talking about this subject again, but unfortunately I'm sure we will, but you provided a wealth of information to us. Professor Mazzucelli, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. All the best.